Hey guys, so I am finally doing my November wrap up. It's very late and it's not even that impressive because I only read 4 books in the month of November. But November was just kind of crazy. Like, I took a vacation, there was Thanksgiving, I got sick, it was my birthday. There was just a lot of stuff that made reading not a top priority. But let's talk about November. So the first book that I read in the month of November, I actually finished like November 1st or 2nd, it was right up there, was One True Loves by Taylor Jenkins Reid. And I really liked this book. I gave it 4 stars and I have a review discussion of it which I will link below. Really quickly, just gotta say, there's this young woman who marries her high school sweetheart, and her high school sweetheart, he goes on his plane, which goes down, and he's assumed dead, and she moves on years later, and she's engaged to someone else, and her husband shows up actually alive. So you can imagine the emotional turmoil that this book puts you through, but it really did not disappoint. I found it realistic, despite the plot and how kind of absurd it sounds. The emotions were written realistically, and I think that the characters were just really fantastic. I loved it. The second book that I finished in the month of November was Fatal Grace. Is that it? I have 2 books that sound entirely alike, but it was Fatal Grace by Louise Penny. This is the second book in a mystery series. The first one was Still Life, which I've definitely talked about on this channel because I really love it. They're mystery novels that are set in this small town outside of Montreal, the most adorable town in the entire world, with the most wonderful townsfolk you'll ever read about. I love the characters, and this one takes place during Christmas time. It's a different mystery, obviously, but it's still those same heartwarming characters, and I just really enjoyed it. I listened to it on audiobook and I love the narrator who read the book. I just definitely check this book out if you just want something like not a too heavy of a mystery. It's definitely more lighthearted and it's very more character driven than plot driven. So it's just a really great mystery novel. The third book that I read this month, I read with my book club, and that was Faithful Place by Tana French. This is the 3rd book in her mystery books cycle series. I don't know how many books are in there, but she just like keeps going. This is the one with the main character of Frank, who is an undercover. I gave this one 3 stars. I just couldn't really get into it. It was the fact that Frank, first of all, didn't really seem like the Frank we'd read about with Cassie in book 2, The Likeness. And also the plot mystery just wasn't really appealing to me. It didn't really captivate my interest. I think the writing was still really well done, but just the story itself was kind of lackluster for me, and it wasn't as good as the first 2. So I'm still looking forward to reading more of the Tana French books. This book just wasn't my favorite. The Likeness is still like the best by far. Like, that book just kind of blew me away, and I think because this book followed that book, of course it was going to be a bit of a letdown, but I'm not going to let that stop me from finishing up this series. And then the final book that I read was It Ends With Us by Colleen Hoover. I had been waiting to read this book since it came out because of all the hype that it's gotten on BookTube and Bookstagram. I'm not really a part of the hype, and it's nothing about the message. I don't think this is a spoiler saying that this book deals with the subject of domestic violence. I think that was really well done and portrayed, and it was great to have that in a fictional book because it's not something that's talked about all too much. But I just really couldn't get into it. I didn't really feel anything for any of the characters, and because of that, I kind of felt like I was a distance from the story. And also, I felt like the book was too fast-paced. We had these sections and these scenes, and then we would move on to a scene 6 months later. I did post about this on my Bookstagram, and I did have someone comment saying that she felt the same way, so I'm glad that I'm not alone. I don't think the book was bad, it just wasn't a book that I particularly enjoyed, and it may have been because of the hype was so huge that I expected it to just blow me away, but I just kept reading it and was not blown away, and I kept reading it and was wondering when it was going to blow me away, and it just never really happened. So definitely a book with a great message, but as for the story, not my kind of thing. So those are the books that I read in the month of November. As I said before, I am so excited to be reading this month because I am reading a bunch of Christmas themed books. And on that topic, I want to thank everyone who gave me recommendations on my Christmas TBR video. I am honestly so excited to read some of those books that you guys have recommended. And once I get through my little mini Christmas book stack, I will be moving on to those recommendations because I just want to read as many Christmas books as I can this season. That's all that I have for my November wrap up. Thank you for watching and happy reading.